Okay, great. Thank you, Eric. Um, as we start, please go ahead and check in the chat again. Like how are you doing? What's going on? How's your heart? Um, what are you um yeah, like what's alive for you? Where's the energy at for you right now? I would love to see some of those reflections as well. There's a lot of grief. Um, and maybe some of you joined us earlier today for the winter hours, myself and Sister Shifra. We talked a lot about grief and tending to the grief in the winter and the medicines of that tending. It was really beautiful, beautiful dialogue. And of course, we have two more Mondays to go. And we do have recordings, and we'll figure out um, how to make those recordings available in some way. I'm not on that end of the logistics. I just show up and do shit. And then I have to rely on other people for the rest of the details. This is why I come on not being very knowledgeable, because I make it a point not to be, you know. Um, but hopefully, we'll figure out a way to get those recordings available if you can't join us live. But yeah, grief, rage, fear. All right, living with so much grief, a lot of grief, thinly veiled rage, deep sadness, rage, tender-hearted, fear is alive, also determination to be the light and shake out the ghostly corners of my heart. A struggle, grief, anxiety, anger, trying to stay grounded. It's been bad, money troubles, fears, frustrations, band member pulled out right as we expected new opportunities. Yeah, things would be so much easier if it wasn't for other people. Um, heaviness, physical. Yeah, I mean, this is really the theme: grief, sadness, rage, frustration, despair, sorrow, an activated nervous system. Yeah, let's see if we can work on the nervous system in our practice today. Broken heart, grief. Yeah, yeah. hmm And for those of you who are new as well, I would love to for you to say hello as well if you're new to the practice. Grief, anger, and gratitude. Yeah, gratitude is important. Let's work with gratitude tonight as well. Gratitude for me is how I hang on when the grief is really intense, because I am practicing being grateful for the grief and the anger, right? These experiences are full of so much data, so much information, really, and so much wisdom, right? Um, and the more we resist, the more we kind of bypass the wisdom or the medicine, I would say, of these experiences itself. And this is winter, right? So in our wintering, this is what happens. It's the going inside, going inward, dwelling, right, with some of these energies, these experiences. We call on the elements of water right now, because this is a water season. And as much as you can, dwell with water, you know, meaning you stay hydrated, meaning if there's some water in your community, some, natural water, spending time in that natural water. If you can be in some water, you know, as we were saying this morning, I go to the Y and I go to the hot tub and steam room. And those are important kind of tending experiences for me. Water, like I've learned that water is incredibly necessary for me, particularly hot water. Warm water is really like medicine for me. So you figure that out and you just do it, right? Um, my home and hearth is holding me lovingly. I love that. That's a really beautiful imagery. The hearth. When I think about the hearth, I think about lineage and ancestry. The kitchen, right, is where the ancestors dwell. Right? So if you have a kitchen, right, have some kind of altar in the kitchen somewhere, right? Um, Tender and overwhelmed, but feeling determined. I love the determined and focused comments as well. Like staying connected to that determination, and the determination is really it's rooted in a real compassion for yourself and for everyone, right? Um, and this is why for me, like gratitude is such an important thing because gratitude really helps me to stay connected to, I would say, the blessings of this moment, right? Um, that for me, my gratitude is also deeply rooted in the fact that I choose to do what I do. I choose to stay with the pain, right? Because if I don't stick with my pain, I won't be able to stick with the collective pain, right? If I don't stick with the collective pain, I don't know how to show up and hold space for the collective experience, right? Because if I bypass my experience of discomfort, um, then that becomes apathy, right? And I lose empathy for, of course, myself, but for everyone. And that's when violence really starts. It's in that space of apathy, of no longer caring. When we no longer care, then you start doing whatever you want to people, right? And I think we see that. We see that right now, particularly if you're in the United States, right? You see that with, I would say, with um, like ICE and this kind of like the political right, and I would say also the religious right as well, which also reminds me of something else I wanted to say about Sunday service, but I'll say in just a second. I just want to put a bookmark there. But this loss of empathy helps us, really, it aids us in showing up and just being these expressions of violence, right? And what we are having to struggle to do is retain our empathy. I think this is the most important thing that we can do, retain the empathy. I am in a lot of suffering, and therefore all beings are in a lot of suffering. If you're here embodied, no matter how realized you are experiencing suffering. That's just the rule. No, even an enlightened being is experiencing suffering, right? But they have the space and insights, right? So that the suffering doesn't become the totality of their experience. Space, emptiness, all of that's, of course, holding, but there's still an experience. And that experience isn't exhausted until, right, till we achieve complete awakening. Um, Beyond, right, beyond the body, beyond this realm, right? So every being, again, so every being is suffering, right? Um, I'm just continuing to read, some of the comments, disheartened, tender-hearted, vulnerable, um, tender-hearted. That's such a powerful descriptor as well, tender-hearted, the tenderness, right? The aching. That's the tenderheartedness is important. the aching of the tender heart is really important because that keeps us connected. It keeps reminding us, right, that there's suffering, that the real issue is suffering, right? We do things because of the suffering. We do things because of the suffering because we don't yet remember the truth of things. The suffering is real because I forgot what suffering, the nature of suffering really is, which is the nature of all phenomena. Yeah, struggling to maintain energy, I can relate to that as well. So I feel in my practice the heaviness, the grief, the rage, the loneliness, right? And this is Lonesome Valley work, you know. We talked about this morning. But the Lonesome Valley, which we did Lonesome Valley about 4 years ago now, which is, you know, it's wild to think it's been that long. But some of you were in that course. I think Lonesome Valley was the first iteration of the grief work. So every year, it looks like I keep changing the focus of the grief work. And so the first year of formal grief work was this idea, the image of the Lonesome Valley is that when we go into dwelling with the grief, it feels isolating, alone. But as we're moving through the grief, we understand that we're not necessarily alone, that we're being held in the process. We're being held by ancestors and, you know, Buddhas and all kinds of spirits, the earth, the elements, as well, the natural world. We're being held, but we have to do the work, right? And really, the work is learning how to hold the grief without bypassing, running away, to feel it and to keep offering it back to space, right? I don't have to hold on to shit. We don't have to hold on to it. This is not the practice, right? We're not holding on. We're allowing things to be. We're allowing things to have their space, right? And then we rely on all these other resources and beings to support us in holding it, but they're not holding it necessarily. They're helping us, but we're doing the labor. All beings have to do this labor, right? This is the labor of coming into relationship with the truth of our own experience. And the Buddha can't do that for you. Jesus can't do that for you. You know, your partner can't do this for you. No matter how many people you have in your polycule, they can't do this for you. And I know people who attempt to do that with their polycules. I'm like, that's not, a crowd doesn't make the work easier, right? And this is the hard thing. I know this is the part of Dharma work that there's just no easy way around it. Like you have to sit through this. You have to be through it. You have to move through it. You have to feel it. I know there's a lot to feel. There's a lot of really tough energy, traumas, and so forth that we're learning how to feel and experience and process over time. But at the end of the day, to really experience liberation, everything must be experienced, right? Why does everything have to be experienced? Because everything is of the same nature. And you can't get to that truth if you're always believing that suffering and joy are two different things, right? That sour and sweetness are two different things, that shit and sugar are completely two different things. That's not the case, you know. Can't mix it up and turn it into sweet shit, right? You have to sit through it to understand that everything is everything, right? So the exhaustion, the pain, the grief that we experience now is of the same nature as the joy, the ecstasy, the gratitude, right? The euphoria, whatever, our happiness. They're all the same nature. Like everything is everything, as Lauren Hill, pointed out, right? Um, And this is heartbreaking work. And heartbreak, it's a friend of mine now, right? The heartbreak is a friend. And this is where we want to get to as well, that what we struggle with has to be befriended. And that's how we're able to allow these things to be. Here's my heartbreak. Here's my grief. Here's my exhaustion. This is what it feels like. This is arising in space. Everything is arising from emptiness, right? And it is what it is, right? It's not so extraordinary the more you practice with it, right? Um, let's see. Kristen, you received fire ceremony. Oh, Sister Sifra is a holder, a Mayan fire ceremony holder. And so if you come on retreat with us, if we're both there, then we're always doing Mayan ceremony ritual. Um, and that's a very powerful ritual. It's a very powerful ceremony. And the fire, right? The fire is really important. The lights, the clarity, like the transformation, the transmutation, right? The burning up of things, the sacred fire. Sometimes we call it the sacred duni, right? The sacred duni, right? We're offering everything we no longer need into the sacred fire and letting the fire transform it and release the energy of these materials. And we dedicate, right, the energy of that. We direct the energy of these offerings to liberation of all beings. Okay. And what I was going to just say, about Sunday service again, we talk about, kind of like religious violence, the violence of like, you know, mainstream right-wing Christianity. So much of what I feel I'm called to do is reclaim, these teachings and to embody them in a way that they were meant to be practiced. Right. That means we, and you know, and with theology, Christianity as well. I have my own, kind of complex, in some ways, troubled relationship with the ways in which Christianity was forced onto my ancestors, and the way it still has a chokehold on a lot of Black folks as well. And I don't mean to say that in a way that feels offensive or disrespectful, but I feel that we have to remember that the point of Christianity is the love, and I think that's been lost. And this is where we find ourselves, the weaponizing of love. Love can be weaponized, right? Um, and I've heard people say there's no hate quite like Christian love. And I've been a recipient of that for many years. I have personal experience of that. And which is why I left Christianity and ended up a Dharma practitioner, because I was like, I need to be loved. I need to experience love. And this is the practice that's helping me, right? This has been the only practice, meta practice, loving kindness practice has been the only practice that has gotten into a real embodiment and ethic of love for me, the feeling of love, right? Right. And we have to reclaim that. And part of what we do in Sunday service is reclaiming that, because many of us were born into, Christianity, but like the Abrahamic religions, right? We're influenced by that. Not all of us, of course, but a lot of us have been. And my healing has been about reclaiming that for myself, right? Not, I don't have to practice it, right, to reclaim it, but the reclamation itself, is to understand that um, there was something good about this. There was something liberatory, but maybe the liberation has been lost a little bit, right? Because God is a really hard state to embody, you know, like emptiness. Is, for me, and God is emptiness. Emptiness is God. There's no other God than emptiness. Emptiness, and I don't know where am I parroting this from? I don't know, you know. But but the emptiness, the embodiment of emptiness, right, is just the goal, I would say, of Buddha Dharma, the embodiments, the experience of emptiness, right? And knowing that the embodiment of emptiness isn't about the erasure of anything, right? It's about the remembering of the nature of everything. That's all it is. And how that remembrance frees us from this intense reactivity. And when we are released from all this intense reactivity, we just start expanding, opening into the true nature of things, into the essence, right? I mean, it's as I always say, it's like um, the Magic Eye books. It's like you just kind of stare and stare, right? And I think for religion, right, I think that you keep staring and staring, trying to figure out the secret of things, and you get frustrated and think that the staring is the goal. So I see a lot of people, not just with Christianity, but many traditions past that I've been connected to, where it's like you forget that the point is to be instead of like the endless pursuits and doing, right? Instead of trying to like figure out God, you just be, right? You allow yourself, and that means that we're expanding, opening, trusting space to hold us, right? Um, yeah. And lastly, yeah, this aversion. Oh, finding that it continues to be challenging to differentiate the grief from the aversion to the grief. So that for me, that's like pain and suffering. That's the relationship of pain and suffering. Pain is the basic sensation. Suffering is our aversion to that sensation, right? So some of us haven't even gotten to the grief because we're still wrapped up in pushing the grief away, the aversion, which takes a lot of energy, by the way. Right? Why does it take a lot of energy? Because grief arises from emptiness. We'll just say like this is the mind, so grief arises, right? Like all phenomena out of emptiness. So when you talk about pushing it away, it's this idea that like grief is a singular experience that you can just push away like something, like an object, right? And that's it. But when in fact, grief is like being in water and trying to push away water, right? If you're in the pool or whatever, if you're in water, it's like you're just like, you're not pushing anything away. You're just sliding your hands through the water, but water isn't going anywhere. This is what grief is. Like this kind of aversion to grief. It's like you're pushing grief away, but grief is still there. Right. And so, in order to perfect the illusion that you're pushing something away, you start imagining that grief is that you start just bypassing, cutting off the experience of grief to facilitate the illusion that you're pushing it away. But you're really not. You're just bypassing it. It's still there. And that takes a lot of energy, right? It takes a lot of distraction, right? And I see that being the case with a lot of folks right now, right? That you have to go through a lot of severe disembodiment, disassociation to really pull this illusion off. And that's where people are. And unfortunately, is in such a state for many beings that it's going to take many lifetimes for them to heal from this kind of disembodiment, right? And this is why I keep saying and writing that, not everyone's going to make it, right? Because it's going to take a lot of work to heal from the severance that we pull off trying to negotiate and manage the suffering of this realm. And we carry that severance as this embodiment into the bardo of the spirit world as well. And that's still an issue, right? So yeah. And then and so just coming back to everything, because I do want to start practice, right? It's just so coming back, right? Right now in this season, we're being asked to build our altars to our grief. Build your altar. Feed your altar, offer unto your altar. Don't keep pushing the grief away, but invite it to be a guest in your home, in your body, in your experience, in your mind. And that's the way that we start just inviting and opening and allowing these energies, these experiences to be, and it will change you, you know. And are you ready to get changed? Right? This is another big part of the question, right? Are you ready to change? Right? Or are you so self-identified with the suffering that you're terrified of something different? Right? And then we're still in the world, right? We're still in systemic collapse, right? We're still in this ambiguous phase, this place right now. Like, and how do you take care of yourself, your communities, your beloveds, and still be in the world right now? Right? And this is a huge order. Like I said, there's a lot that we're being asked to do, but I believe that you're doing it, even though many of you say, "Oh, I'm not really doing well." I think if you're here showing up, you're doing something well, you know. Yeah, we're trying to tread water right now. Sometimes we dip below the water surface, but it's fine because we pop right back up. You know, you fall down, you get back up again. I'm not so interested necessarily in what it means to stay up. I'm more interested in how we choose to come back up again, right? Great, you can stay up, you can stay aware, great. But I'm more interested again in how you choose the love and the courage to keep saying yes. Like when you've fallen below the surface, when you've been distracted, how do you keep coming back? How do you keep saying yes? Right? That's what I'm in. That's the Dharma. The Dharma doesn't say shit about necessarily, it doesn't say a lot about the actual state of enlightenment, right? Because there's no more work after that. Like you're enlightened, there's no more work. We don't need to talk about that. But what we need to talk about is how to get there, right? And this is where we invest our energy in the work and in the labor. So as we begin, let's begin, just moving into our practice, right? And so let's start by finding our seats, right? Just finding your seat, the weight of your body, the seat rising to hold you. And as we find the seat, we're also beginning to call ourselves right back into this moment. So noticing where you are, if you're in the past, if you're in the future, then drawing yourself back to the seats, to the weight of your body, the seat rising to hold you, which is the anchor. And this is one of the bravest, most courageous things that we do in our practice is to return, right? To come back to the moment, to what's arising right now, to what's going down in this moment, to everything that we are always trying to bypass, to escape. We have to come back and see it, notice it. Because first we're just noticing. And then we just touch the earth, right? And to touch the earth, we think about the earth, the land that's holding all of us, the land which is the expression of the sacred mother. And when I think about the earth, right, I feel the consciousness, the energy of the earth very present. Like it feels very immediate, or in a way tangible, which is different. This experience is different for all of us, right? But just touching the earth, acknowledging the earth, offering gratitude to the earth as we begin our practice. And so as we move deeper into the practice, as always, I just encourage you to make this easy, right? To find this balance between like intense effort and this kind of fluidity, openness. There's a middle way here that we do push a little bit, but the pushing doesn't become so distracting, right? We're finding the space of just skillfully allowing, letting things happen, and how our awareness is what really like holds this arising and also acts as like, I would say like a container, right? A very expensive container. And so I invite you to find your breath. Just noticing the in breath and the out breath. If you're breathing or working with your breath, if that feels really expansive or generative for you, allowing yourself to just inhale through the nose and exhaling out of your mouth, and really extending both the in breath and the out breath, really elongating, taking your time and really actually slowing the exhale, the out breath down quite a bit. And as you're doing this, you're still feeling the seat under you. You're still connecting to the earth as this energetic experience. And we can use the breath to first inhale into what we're struggling with, be it the exhaustion, the sadness, the grief, the anger, breathing into these experiences, right? But to breathe into it, to inhale into it, means that we're going to it, right? So the breath is finding its way to where this heavy, stuck, intense energy is. And then we imagine that the in-breath starts dissolving, breaking up some of this energy. And then as we exhale out of the mouth, we're releasing this energy as much as we can. And as we release it in the out breath, we're also thinking, I am releasing, right? I am freeing this grief or this anger or this exhaustion in the out breath. So it's important to think that, right? Particularly if you're new to this, think I am releasing. And as we inhale, we're thinking I am breathing, inhaling into this energy. As we exhale, I am releasing this energy. And if it's helpful, adding a few kind of somatic practices, particularly focusing on the neck and shoulders, the upper chest, or the heart chakra center, right? And just doing like very simple things like maybe rolling the head as you're moving through the breath is really helpful, right? And then, just like rolling the shoulders in any way that feels good for you. And as you're rolling your shoulders back, just feeling the opening of the heart center and feeling that exposure, right? And if you come to rest with the shoulders, just resting as you're just allowing the shoulders to rest as your chest, heart center is opening. So feeling the resting posture of an open heart, right? And when it feels as if, your heart center is exposed and ready, I like to just start like just rubbing my heart center in a very circular motion, you know. And I focus primarily on the friction of my hand on my heart center. And you can, I think it's also really powerful to actually um, directly touch your chest, your skin, right? You don't have to do that on camera. You can turn your camera off to do that, but just feeling that. And what we're doing is first the heat, the friction, right? And that heat from the friction is actually beginning to awaken to move. particularly the energy of the heart center. And in a moment, we're going to change the focus of the breath as well, which will support this practice. Right? And then like any kind of open, free movement is really important as well. You know, we come into our meditation practice and we get so rigid, right? So we have to shake it up. Right? And we know that if we can shake it, we can make it. Right? So if you can shake it, you can make it. And so as you're moving, right, you're beginning to like just move this physical energy through the body, right? Because so many of us are experiencing a lot of grief that a lot of that energetic grief can get kind of pulled or kind of like lodged in the heart center, even though grieving energy can happen anywhere in the body, right? But we hold a lot here as well in the heart center. So moving that, warming this up, shaking it, right? And I feel a lot better personally after having done this. Um, right? And so we know that in the winter, energetically in the winter, water is one of our main elements, but water can also freeze. And so what we're doing in these practices is thawing the ice some to get the waters flowing, to get the energy flowing again. And whenever you feel complete, right, you can come back into a little bit of stillness if that's what you want to do, or you can keep moving as well. And so we turn our attention now to our opening mantra, Menla Sangye Kino Soha. Medicine Buddha, please think of me, please be with me, abide with me. And we're going to keep the practice very simple in this session as well. I'm not going to do a lot of complex visualization either, but just it's just important just to be, to dwell, to open, to feel supported right now. And allowing Medicine Buddha, right, and the mantras to do the rest right now. So we turn our attention to the first mantra, beginning with Om, and then chanting the mantra 3 times, and then ending with Om. Okay? We begin. Om Sange Kino So Om Sange Kino So Om Sange Kino So So we return our attention right back into the heart center. And we imagine now that we're breathing in and out of the heart center. And we can continue to release as well with this breath. So breathing into the heart center, breathing maybe into the grief or the anger, dissolving and releasing. Maybe returning back to the circular motions around the heart center and around the neck, the shoulders, whatever meets you where you need today. Please do that. And we can begin to imagine from here that within the heart center, Medicine Buddha begins to arise, begins to appear or to take form. And we can imagine that Medicine Buddha in his iconic form that you see on the prayer dock appears in your heart center. Not heavy or solid, but like almost like an illusion, a shadow, but a brilliant, energized kind of awakening or illusion. But nothing solid, right? But Medicine Buddha is also a feeling, an experience. And even for me, like even right now, like Medicine Buddha is taking on the form of this wish really to be free. And feeling that wish kind of manifesting in my heart center to be free, to be healed. The Medicine Buddha can be a feeling. It can be a memory. Medicine Buddha can arise as a kind of meditative stability, so a kind of focus, an openness, that you're just present, that you're just grounded. Like that's the awakening of Medicine Buddha as well. And maybe Medicine Buddha is right behind or in this experience of grief or anger right now. That Medicine Buddha is actually within those difficult experiences. But just allowing the arising of Medicine Buddha to happen for you. And then taking a risk a chance and just resting in what you think or believe Medicine Buddha to be for you right now in the practice. And as we do that, we turn our attention to Medicine Buddha's main mantra, Teata Bekenze, Maha Bekenze, Rasa Sumangate Soha. Like this, I pray for the end of suffering and the root of all pain and suffering. And this mantra is a prayer that releases this blessing, not just for us, but for all beings, back out into the world, so that all beings may be liberated. And you can sit and listen to the mantra, you can chant along in your space. But what's more important, what's critical, is that you allow yourself to rest within whatever form or experience Medicine Buddha is arising for you. And just see what happens. Surrender and just see what happens. And so we begin. O te anda begen se ma begen se razu sumungate soha te anda begen se ma begen se razu sumungate soha te anda Begenze, ma begenze, razu sumungate soha. 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 Te anda umbegense begense ma begense razu sumungate soha te anda umbegense begense ma begense razu sumungate soha te anda umbegense begense ma begense razu sumungate soha te anda umbegense begense ma begense razu sumungate soha te anda umbegense begense ma begense razu sumungate soha te anda umbegense begense ma begense razu sumungate soha te anda umbegense begense ma begense razu sumungate soha te anda umbegense begense ma begense razu sumungate soha te anda umbegense begense ma begense razu sumungate soha te anda umbegense begense ma begense razu sumungate soha te anda umbegense begense ma begense razu sumungate soha te anda umbegense begense ma begense razu sumungate soha te anda umbegense begense ma begense razu sumungate soha te anda umbegense begense ma begense razu sumungate soha te anda umbegense begense ma begense razu sumungate soha te anda umbegense begense ma begense razu sumungate soha te anda umbegense begense ma begense razu sumungate soha te anda umbegense begense ma begense razu sumungate soha te anda umbegense begense ma begense razu sumungate soha te anda umbegense begense ma begense razu sumungate soha te anda umbegense begense ma begense razu sumungate soha te anda umbegense begense ma begense razu sumungate soha te anda umbegense begense ma begense razu sumungate soha te anda umbegense begense ma begense razu sumungate soha te anda umbegense begense ma begense razu sumungate soha te anda umbegense begense ma begense razu sumungate soha te anda umbegense begense ma begense razu sumungate soha te anda umbegense begense ma begense razu sumungate soha te anda umbegense sumunga te soha. Te anda begenze ma begenze raza sumunga te soha. Te anda begenze ma begenze raza sumunga te soha. Te anda begenze ma begenze raza sumunga te soha. Te anda begenze ma begenze raza sumunga te soha. Te anda begenze ma begenze raza sumunga te soha. Te anda begenze ma begenze raza sumunga te soha. Te anda begenze ma begenze raza sumunga te soha. Te anda begenze ma begenze raza sumunga te soha. Te anda begenze ma begenze raza sumunga te soha. Te anda begenze ma begenze raza sumunga te soha. Te anda begenze ma begenze raza sumunga te soha. And just turning my attention to our prayer requests, and again we call into the space once again, and all these beings are already present, but we're just going through calling all the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yagams, Dharma protectors, all members of this community of light and liberation, all the spirits, all the guardians, protectors of the lands and the elements that are holding us, as well as the benevolent ancestors. We call you into the space and we offer these prayers to you, and we pray that you bring about the fruition of these prayers while also resourcing us to work to bring about the fruition of these prayers as well. Prayers for ourselves and prayers for others, the communities, and the world in general. So offering prayers for my mother Nancy as she heals from her broken femur, and prayers for my father that he accepts changes with grace. Prayers of gratitude for Eric, prayer of gratitude for the Sangha, Lama Rod, and all the teachers. Prayers for my weekend alone in the woods, that it be fruitful in whatever way it's supposed to be fruitful. Gratitude for all of my beloveds, especially my young daughter and sisters. Prayers for the health and long life of JJD, and for the support and guidance in the path of liberation work. Prayers that I'm able to find a more suitable job and housing situation soon. Prayers for Melissa, Judith, Joy, and Kathy. Prayers for the prayers of thanks and admiration on and for the beings who are helping me, for the nature of spirits, for my connection with Gaia and the sea. Thank you for getting me free and for your care and support. Prayers for those of us who have been sexually abused in religious, spiritual, and or Buddhist communities and are left with deep wounds. Prayers for courage and freedom. Prayers for those wounded and harmed by ice, and for whatever wounds one must have to be an ice agent. Prayers for Joy, Addie, Suli, and Bear. Prayers for clarity in all the worries my soul, in all that worries my soul. Guidance for purposeful passion that provides abundance financially. Prayers for my daughter and myself, and we move through these transitions and transformations. Healing and safety for those women and children being trafficked into slavery and sexual exploitation. Medicine Buddha, please heal the hate, greed, and ignorance at the root of hegemony, and so we can make this place a pure land for all of us. Prayers for M and R, may they experience freedom, healing, and abundance. Prayers for an upcoming trip to see my family. Prayers for Aisa and her heart, that her heart heals and she lives a long, healthy, and love-filled life. Prayers for our teachers, Lama Rod, Rachel, Eli, and others, the long life, abundance, and best conditions for spreading the Dharma. Prayers for my sister who is currently at the hospital following an accident, for healing and for full recovery. Prayers for A as she moves across the country. Prayers for C to feel what feels unbearable. Prayers for Andrew and Becca, their long lives and health and positive conditions. Prayers for C, who took their own life recently and has transitioned. Prayers for M, who is diagnosed with early Parkinson's. Prayers for Lucy, that her leg heals. Prayers for all ancestors who stand with us as we undo fascism and heal the world. Prayers for J, as she continues to deal with the respiratory issues. Prayers for R, as she deals with the court on an issue where interpretations and perspectives differ. Prayers for my grad school path and becoming a better healer myself. Prayers to all parents and caregivers of children. Prayers to those who are anxious and afraid. Prayers for N and R to be safe, healthy, and well. Prayers for everyone to get free. Prayers for balance, simplicity, and focus as I do my work in the face of challenging circumstances and distractions. Prayers for T and my family as he awaits a diagnosis. Those teachers holding this practice those teachers holding the practice in these difficult and painful times. Prayers for Jay as she grieves the sudden death of her husband and his ongoing chemo. Prayers for the wisdom and patience I need to not tell these people about themselves when it's neither the time nor the place. Prayers for Cynthia. Prayers for releasing doubt. Prayers that I continue to learn to hold heartbreak without collapsing. Prayers that I receive guidance and support as I face fears about safety and consider relocating. Um, Prayers for my parents and their families, for the health and well-being of myself, and for my loved ones and our financial security and sustainability, for freedom and for all peoples, for myself, for everyone on my heart. Prayers for all beings, may light be present and we with it within the darkness of these times. Offering prayers for Homero and for Minneapolis. Prayers for my self-punishment mechanism. May I remember I am free and deeply loved. Prayer for W as she is looking for a new place to stay. Prayers for C, who is beginning her recovery journey from trauma. Prayers that I may figure out the resources I need to keep regulating and grieving what needs to be grieved. Prayers for Mahan Siller as she grieves the loss of his wife. As he grieves the loss of his wife of 68 years. Prayers for Janice and the Bardo, for Carol and Tobin, also in the Bardo, and for her partner Scott Davis. Prayers for Lily Keys, who lost her brother Sid Comer last week. Prayers for Sid and the Bardo. His last few years involved the suffering of Lewy body dementia. Prayers for my teacher, Lodra Rinpoche, recovering slowly from the effects of anesthesia in a hernia surgery. Continued prayers for Ricky Joyner, who was re-hospitalized for pneumonia and will be going into rehab when possible. Prayers for progress in healing neuropathy in my feet. Prayers for gratitude for my interactions with living communities, and also an amazing performance of Carmina Burana, a massive symphonic choral piece which allowed me to release grief in the midst of the joy of such skill and beauty. And offering prayers for Renee Good, for her family and entire nation as we continue to grieve for her loss and so many others. Prayers I find a beautiful apartment that serves me just as well as the one I have had for the past 5 years. Prayers for my broken heart. I wish my ex-partner so much love and wellness. Prayers for my grandfather Victor, who began his transition to the ancestral realm on January 8th. Prayers for myself to sustain myself with lots of food, good rest, and friendships through these transitions. May I remember to love myself and move with dignity. Prayers for my Dharma friend Charlie as he navigates hospice and prepares himself to enter into the death bardo. May he find his way to his indestructible heart essence. Prayers for Sophia. May they be safe from ice. May all those be who are detained be freed. May the 500-year war end. Prayers for Dan that he may be freed from his identification with trauma so that he may find the courage to make the deeply needed changes in his life, which will bring happiness and healing to all his path. Prayers for our deeply suffering society that may find our way from fear back to love. And I continue to offer prayers for my aunt Jelaine, who is still recovering from a severe stroke. I continue to pray for all the prayers that are still not offered but are still very heavy in our hearts, minds, and bodies. I offer those prayers as well. I continue to pray for the complete abolition of all systems of harm and violence. May we all be freed. May we all have access to the resources that we need to be well, safe, happy, and again, liberated. May this all come to pass as quickly as possible. May this be so for all beings in all the worlds and all the times as quickly as possible. And we lift these prayers to our benefactors so that they may continue to work on our behalf to bring about the fruition of these prayers. And we return back to our mantra practice just for a very short few minutes. And again, just resting, just sitting, just being within the blessing of the practice. And we begin again. O Tea Taum Begenze Ma Begenze Razasumunga Tesoa Tea Taum Begenze Ma Begenze Razasumunga Tesoa Tea Taum Begenze Ma Begenze Razasumungate Soha Tea Taum Begenze Ma Begenze Razasumungate Soha Tea Taum Begenze Ma Begenze Razasumungate Soha Tea Taum Begenze Ma Begenze Razasumungare Zoha 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 Tea Taum Begenze Ma Begenze Razasumungate Soha Tea Taum Begenze Ma Begenze Razasumungate Soha. And just returning your attention back to this experience of Medicine Buddha, however Medicine Buddha is arising for you. Just allowing this experience to drift back into spaciousness, letting it dissolve back into emptiness. And so when you're ready, just beginning to bring some movement back to your bodies, moving through a few deep cleansing breaths to kind of just come back right into this moment and calling yourself from wherever perhaps you journey to and coming back. And as we do so, let's turn our attention to Shantideva's prayer. Excuse me. And we will recite this 3 times. May I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for all those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures. And until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach unto the ends of space. May I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for all those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine. May I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures. And until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. And finally, may I be a protector to those without protection, and a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures, and until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. Okay. All right. Thank you all so much for your practice today. If there are, I'm just gonna just hold a few minutes for questions. If anyone has questions, you can type those into the chat, or just ask those um, directly.
Yep. If folks would like to raise their hands, they should be able to unmute themselves. And just a reminder, if it would support anyone's participation to have the recording turned off for a share, that's cool too. All right, I see Lorena has their hand.
Hello, dear Lama Rod.
Hey,
How
Lorena, how
are
are
you?
you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Um, I'd put into the chat before, and I guess I just wanted to lift it up. So I think, like, I so appreciate the practice, first of all, today. really leaning into helping us with the grief. Um, I am practicing like thinking about, I think I need to resource more
Mm.
to have enough capacity to then dive in either in inquiry with the pain or just to feel it
Yeah.
and be with it. And I'm curious about yeah, if you could speak
Yeah.
to that. And I think being with the pain, there's many ways of being with the, and maybe grieving, like allowing ourselves to really grieve with it. I think part of that for me is identifying what is this pain I'm holding, so that I can mourn whatever needs to be mourned or move through. I feel like there's various ways to do it, right? When I have enough capacity and spaciousness with me, then I can observe, okay, fear is here, grief is here, whatever, and I'm not enmeshed in it, right? I can just be the wit from that witnesser space. I don't know if I'm then grieving it or holding it, or I think it's just it's there and it kind of find its own way to dissipate. There's
Yeah.
just so many various ways of doing it, and I'm just like
Mhm.
experientially finding my way. And just with this practice, I'm wondering if you could speak to your experience with it,
Yeah.
whether through the practice or beyond.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I'll stop.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, this is such a good question because when we're doing intense work like this, we really have to take care of ourselves. This isn't work that we do depleted, right? Because if you do this kind of intensive work depleted, it runs the risk of really deepening the woundedness, right? Because the exhaustion, like the fatigue itself or the depletion, right, is a loss of a kind of agency. Um, it's the loss of, well, it's the loss of the energy that we need to hold the work. You have to hold the work. You just can't fall into it. And so to be resourced, we really have to figure out what that looks like for us, right? And we also have to be really clear that we can't do certain things until we have certain resources. Like I can't do certain things if I'm not rested, right? I can't, there's certain things that I can't do unless I am nutritionally resourced. I'm eating the right foods, you know. We have to figure that out for ourselves. So when we do, like, for instance, intensive like grief work, then we have to, not only are we feeding the grief, but we're also feeding ourselves. And that has to stay pretty even in terms of like, as we are offering to the grief or tending to the grief, we have to make sure that we're opening really intensely to receiving the resources that we need, right? And saying yes to what we need, right? And of course, we have practices like the seven homecomings that we're calling in. So you always have to be very clear about calling in the resources that you need. Like as you start, as you're maybe moving through a lot of grief, you should be also praying that um, that you're being held, that you're being met, by all the beings, the Buddhas, the spirits, the ancestors, and so forth. That's really important. This year, we have a bunch of new stuff that we're doing on the platform, and one of the things that we're going to start doing is community practices. So I don't know how frequent this will be or how frequent the practices will change, but just for the whole community, there will just be practices, I think, for every season, as I'm thinking now, that we'll all be doing together. That's going to be really based upon feeling resourced and doing certain kinds of work. And we'll just cycle through these practices. We may start in the spring. Vajrasattva may be that practice we start with collectively. Um, so I think this will be really helpful for all of us to be doing something together and for that practice to be shifting in terms of feeling resource and so forth. But I hope that's helpful. You don't always have to do everything. You can always say, you know what, I don't have the energy And I do that. Sometimes I'm just like, fuck it today. I'm going to sleep. I'm not going to deal with this anger. I'm not going to deal with this pain. It's going to have to wait till the morning when I have energy, you know. Um, yeah.
Thank you.
Eh,
Lots of great questions in the chat and lots of great hands raised as well.
Okay.
Shall we take one from the chat to
Yeah.
start?
Yeah.
What if I don't want to release grief as it is a much needed connection to a dear loved one I just lost?
Yeah. The grief, the grief isn't connecting you to the loved one. Um, that grief is something that's tangible for you to experience loss and to reveal to you, to show you that you indeed loved this person. And that's often why we hang on to grief, the grief of loss, the loss of loved ones, right? The grief is connected to that love. And so, yeah, you can hold on to it, but at some point you have to trust your love for this person to keep you connected, to sustain you, not the grief. The grief is depleting you. You know, the grief is, again, arising as this experience to let you know something has shifted, something has changed, right? And we don't push it away, nor do we hold on to it. We just let it be. Grief is something we let be, and then we figure out how to tend to it, how to be with it over time, right? But we actually want to connect to the love itself. And grief, the deep experience of grief can get in the way of that love, that intimacy with the person who's transitioned on. So for now, yeah, of course, you're going to hold on to it, but also we're going to have to start relaxing around that to let grief be on its timeline, be on its journey, right? And so that we can get back to the real love that we have for this person, as well. So,
Thank you. We have three hands raised as well. Shall we start with Josh?
sure, uh-huh.
Hello, everyone. Lama Rod, thank you so much. I've been joining for the last few weeks. Very thankful for everything you've been talking about. I guess my specific question for myself is how to stay aspirational in a capitalistic society, how to balance those things when trying to be aspirational and building wealth. Are those things that you find value in?
Yeah.
Um, I know the last question that was asked about resourcing, like resourcing, financial resourcing. How do we, I don't know. I know my question feels kind of all over, but how to kind of keep some integrity in this search, and also is that aspect, that search for financial stability, serving our search for enlightenment? So thank you.
Well, thank you, because this is a very good question, because it's really about how do we navigate the contradictions of samsara to get free? Because we have to. You just can't bypass. Like we can't actually bypass the systems that are functioning. We can't bypass even wealth, right? Because of course we know there are different kinds of wealth, you know. Um, but when we're talking about the kind of wealth that you're talking about, we have to understand money as energy. Money is energy that we use to care for ourselves, to be in relationship with the phenomenal world, because there's always energy, and money is one form of energy that's always being exchanged, but energy is always being exchanged. There's always a give and take here, right? Tangible physical money and wealth is just one manifestation that's gotten too manifested, right? It's gotten too like tangible, it's too strict, it's too rigid, right? And we therefore have to be in a really expansive, fluid relationship with actual physical financial wealth, that we can't use it to develop or validate ourselves, to feed a sense of worth, right? That again, money is just this energy that's always being exchanged, right? And we can use it as best as we can for the benefit of ourselves and all beings, right? We develop ethics around money that are really liberatory. For instance, like I I I open to financial wealth so it can help me do the work to help others, not just to accumulate and not just to have, not just to be rich, but to actually distribute, right? To help others, right? And we're always going to be living in a kind of system like this, right? But we don't have to be trapped by it. Right now, we're trapped by it. And so, how do we get untrapped? How do we get more fluid, more open? How do we get really to the very nature of material, physical wealth as well? And getting to the nature of wealth, how do we allow ourselves to be freed from our fixation and attachments to physical wealth? Because we accumulate and consume because we're not actually doing the practices of tending to the suffering, right? So we use energy, particularly how energy can manifest as money, to bypass pain through overconsumption, right? And I wonder what it would be like if we reverse that, if we said, okay, let's tend to the pain through practices, through all the resources of community and ceremony and whatever, right? Meditation. What would that look like, and how would that orientation to real healing release our collective from our fixation on physical material wealth? And you can do that, you know? I don't foresee us living, at least in my lifetime, foresee us living in like a capitalist free world, you know? But I do think it's quite possible for us to disrupt our fixation on wealth, primarily because we have to. We're going to have to do that. But it's not going to disappear, right? And that can still be a liberated world, right? Because the liberation isn't so much about the absence of things, it's about our relationship to the thing, particularly our relationship to the thing that actually perpetuates suffering. That's what we're trying to get liberated from. And that's how I see the liberated future, is that we're freed from the things that perpetuate suffering, right? And it doesn't mean things disappear, it means that they're free. And then we get to choose our relationship with it. And we get to choose a relationship that isn't so like clingy, because we're already doing this central work of tending to our suffering through all these other resources. So I hope that's enough to get you into a good financial, liberatory ethic around money. In a nutshell, like this.
Thank you. Do we have capacity for two more?
Yeah, I know there's one more. There's one more in the chat that I noticed, which was about the heat. And the heat is just like it's in a really simple ways, it's things burning. So if you feel that heat arise, and this is something that I go through, you know, often, like in practice, the increase of heat, it really means I'm just like pushing through something, burning through something, releasing something. So I wouldn't be terribly, you know, um, you know, whatever, like afraid of that. You okay.
That's good. So we have two hands and then one other question that came in from the chat.
Okay.
Hi, Raf.
Oh, hello, Eric, Lama, Sangha. Very sweet to be here. Um, yeah. So one thing that has just been on my mind lately, and I figure this may as well ask here. So I continue to have some recurring dreams, where I am stuck in transit, often stressed, like stuck in a way station or a transit hub.
Hmm.
And ultimately, there's this theme of where I never actually make it to that destination.
Hmm.
So just wondering on how to interpret this, suggestions moving forward, and how to connect it to my practice. Thank you as always.
Well, what that dream is it just indicates that you are growing, changing, evolving, and that everything that's happening around you, you talk about the band and having this opportunity and frustration with money and everything. Those are just signs that you're shifting, evolving, and that there are certain things that are just falling away, but you're really attached to those things, right? And in the dream, when you're trying to get somewhere but not getting there, that has different indications. But first, it indicates that you're holding on to something that you need to release in order to get to the place you're trying to get to. That's one thing. But secondly, the dream also is helping you or encouraging you to just be in the discomfort of transition, letting go of this desire to want to get somewhere, right? Because the desire to get somewhere often gets in the way of getting there,
Mm.
you know?
Maybe even remembering in some sense I'm already there.
Right. Ultimately, because ultimately that's the wisdom. You're already where you need to be. You just need to understand that. Like, we're already free, we're already liberated, right? If it wasn't for this dream, we would get that.
Mm.
Right. So that's what the dream is trying to do. So you're just going through all this change, this evolution, and it's fine because it's a spiritual upgrade. I mean, I suspect.
Clean.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I suspect that a lot of folks in this space are going through that right now. The grief, the anger, all of that, those are like signs of transformation and transition, you know? I know it's easy to feel like, oh, like this feels overwhelming, but this is what growth, healing, transition, evolution feels like. Like, it's not fun, right? Because what you're also experiencing, as I just pointed out, you're experiencing the frustration of holding on to who you thought you were, or you're holding on to what you thought you needed, when in fact you don't need any of that anymore. So you have to develop the courage to let go. And when you let go, it's like you're just going to be in wide open space and it's going to feel really intense, right? Because you're reorienting, right? Because we're always trying to reorient to the boundaries and to the rigidity. But what you're being trained to do is to reorient yourself to the space, to the boundlessness, to the emptiness. That's the real freedom, not the constriction and the rigidity of confined space or the restriction of confined identity, right? You're being released from that. And do you have the courage to say yes to who and what you're becoming? And this is a hard one. I've been down this road many, many times. I'm constantly going down this road, right? It's that, like, I'm always being asked to change, but I'm always asking for change. You should always be changing. You should always be growing, right? What scares me is when you're not, or when anyone isn't changing. The Dharma, if you practice Dharma, you will be continuously changing. And that's the risk that we take. But it's not really a risk, right? I mean, because Dharma takes us to liberation, right? But the risk is that, and I think this is the case for all of us, the real risk is how do we continue to belong as we change? Because guess what? You're going to have to, like, leave some people. Like, you're going to have to, like, break up with some folks. You're going to have to leave some communities, right? And that's heartbreaking. Right?
Lama Rod, there's a question that came in that's really, really close along these lines.
Uh-huh.
I'd love to hear more about how to work with dealing with feelings of needing to be punished, how to work with that self punishment mechanism we've been so conditioned with.
It sounds like you're a Catholic. This is like a very Catholic thing that I hear from Catholic friends. Catholics in recovery, I would say. Um, they have that need to be punished, right? It's so carceral, isn't it? Like this, it's funny how organized religion can be so deeply tied to carcerality. You do something wrong, you get punished. Of course, that's like original sin, and like we find in Christianity. Um, hmm, I would, this really actually requires a lot of deep kind of loving kindness practice or meta practice to start actually releasing like this kind of self criticism, that you deserve to be punished, that you need to be punished, um, that you have to experience some kind of pain to be motivated, right, to do something, particularly to get free. And so that needs to be you have to restore a sense of loving self through um, through these kind of like loving kindness meta based practices. The seven homecomings is a really great way to do that as well. I don't know if you are um, practicing that or have exposure to that, but we have seven homecomings practice groups, and I think we still have weekly practices, and um, so
Hey,
we would
Lama
love to.
Rod.
Uh huh.
I asked the question.
Who's,
It's
who's that?
Zuleika. It's Zuleika.
Oh, oh, hey.
Hi. Yeah, so as you know, I didn't grow up Catholic. I grew up Buddhist. Um, but it's still there. I was actually so surprised by it and how intense it was and how intense it came up for me. And it made me really understand like how come it's so hard for abolition to like be a thing in the world. Um, because I was like, oh, I deserve to be punished. I deserve like when I made a mistake, like I deserve to be um like with retribution or something.
Yeah,
And I was like, yeah, that really comes from not just like sure there's the religious aspect because like my family's also Muslim.
yeah.
Um, but like it also like it felt very like the carceral state was just like so alive in my body. And like I've for the past few weeks just had to be like, I don't deserve to be punished. I don't deserve to be punished,
That's it.
like constantly. And I practice metta all the time. And I think just the like wave of intensity and how intense it was for me, like made me it just really took me by surprise. And so that's where the question was coming from because I was
Um,
like, yeah, like it was, it's still intense, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, it's sometimes it can feel like we don't trust the love. Like the love isn't enough to hold us, right? Or to support us. That we need that carceral mentality to get things done. And that means that you're doing this sounds like really like deep, intensive work. Like these like there it feels okay, it feels very subtle, but it's still really intense. Like it's deep, it's ancestral, right? And you're digging the roots of this carcerality out of your experience. And what you have to continue doing is doing exactly what you're doing. But I think putting you're taking this too seriously. Like at some point, this just has to be a thought that you notice, you hold, and you release. And that's it. Sometimes the more we focus on these patterns, the more we reinforce them. Right. So when I notice these patterns in my own practice, again, it's just like I notice, I say, there you are, and I'm going to let you go. I'm going to therefore replace this with another attitude, a more liberatory, loving, caring attitude, which you're doing. But I think you need to focus more on not taking this so seriously. It's just a thought, right? And so I want you to say that when this pattern reemerges, this is just a thought. This is just a feeling. This is just an experience. Why am I investing all of this reactivity into it? Because the reactivity is also reinforcing this as well, right? So release it. But also, what you have to do in the letting go is that you have to experience the core of this. What's at the core of this carceral mentality? And that's beyond articulation. This is something you just have to feel. It's energy that's asking to be released, right? And it's still there's a lot of grief. There's actually that core experience within that carceral attitude. Our experience is really it's dense with ancestral patterns, with a lot of self hate, with a lot of judgment, a lot of grief, apathy, anger. It's really balled up into something. And all you have to do, you have the practice, right, and the stability in your practice to do the just kind of releasing it. So when you feel that, you say, this is a thought, this is a feeling, but I want you in your practice to slip into the experience and not naming anything, not, thinking about it, just experiencing this and what it feels like to just let it go. And of course, that letting go is letting go of the reactivity, right? Just letting it be, just letting it move through. I wonder how that would change your relationship to this.
Thank you. I think I think I needed that permission
Hmm.
because I've been trying and then I keep being like, no, you deserve to feel this way.
And you let that go. Like when that thought comes up, let it go. Like
Yeah.
don't engage with it
Okay.
and just keep going into the experience.
Okay.
So you shouldn't be thinking about anything in this
Okay.
part of the practice. This is just experiencing.
Okay. Thank you. I
Yeah.
really appreciate that a lot. Thank you. And thank you, Eric.
And just to say too, I know that some of us are new to practice, some of us have been around for a bit, right? And particularly for those of you who are new to practice in general, I know, we sit here and we talk about this stuff, and this was my experience coming into practices for the first time, when I started practicing Dharma, and I would sit in sessions like this, and I would just be like, I don't know how people are doing these practices. I can barely like focus on my breath, right? I barely want to practice to begin with, which was really my case. I barely want to sit and meditate, let alone getting to this place where I'm doing this intense emotional work in practice or dealing with these deities and all these advanced practices. And so I want you to honor where you are, right? That you're at the beginning of something and practice takes time to develop. Right. And we're going to be focusing this year on like more of this development of practice as well with some of the work that we have coming up and the programs, right? Getting back to basics so we can start building up a practice together. I can only do what I do because I've been doing it for so long, right? Like I had to go through the same stages of development, although they were quick because I have all these lives of practice and all this merit, which many of you do too as well. This isn't like extraordinary. Like merit is why we're here. This is how we ended up in this space. This is how we end up in practice. We have this tendency to work to get clear, that you're just tuning back into, right? And continuing to work with, right? Um, but it still takes effort to develop these practices, so just stay with it and hang with it. Like it just takes time and things slowly start to land and to get clear over time. Okay. So we'll take one more question. I see one hand raised, I think.
Hi, Curtis.
Hi, Lama Rod. It's really
Hey.
nice to meet you, or to talk to you one-on-one for the first time. I've been in many things this year. Um, I have stepped into what feels like a very sacred role with an organization called Juntos, and I am one of the key brains behind our Ice Watch. Um, and I keep having the feeling that I want to wear some sort of garment, because I feel like, sorry, I'm teary-eyed because it's very powerful to be talking to you about this. I've never cared about wearing a sacred garment before. My mother was Buddhist and wore a scarf. She became Buddhist when I was in high school, and I never understood it. And I want to wear something to indicate that I am in prayer when I am there. Um, and wondering if there's anything in it's the first time I'm saying our school out loud, to somebody that knows how it's pronounced. So is it Kagyu? Is
Yeah.
that correct?
You can get Kagyu or Kaju, but I say Kagyu.
Kagyu.
Hmm.
Is there anything I could be wearing that would be true to the tradition yeah?
Yeah, I mean, you can wear any kind of like red
Okay.
or white kind of shawl,
Okay.
you
Thank you.
know, and that's appropriate. Any practitioner can wear, a shawl. Yeah.
And is there a difference between red and white or meaning behind it?
Um, no, I mean it's really up to you. These are traditional colors, red and white, maybe yellow, right? Um, but it represents the lineage, not just Kagyu, but like all the lineages, you know. And that's totally fine. Yeah, I think it's important. I think it's really powerful that you're stepping into a very sacred role. You really are. Like in this kind of warfare, there's a spiritual positionality here. This is spiritual warfare,
Definitely.
and so you want to wrap yourself in a garment that indicates that supports you in this kind of warfare. And this is different for everyone.
Yeah.
Some people need garments, some people need, kind of jewelries, artifacts, right? But you find what you need and you use it, right? We use these things to reinforce a sense of sacredness in the work.
Thank you. I'm deeply in gratitude to be with you. And the way I found you was through your conversation with, I mean, my friend had already recommended you, and I attended one of your talks actually first. But hearing you talk with Angela Davis is
Uh,
what really brought me in. And I am so grateful for that conversation. And it has helped carry me, all these months. And I started doing this work right around the same time. So thank you so much.
thank you. Yeah, thank you for being here. Yeah, Miss Angie, honey. Miss Angie D, honey. That was like I'm still processing that conversation. It was a lot. Like it was a lot. You
Yes,
realize
yes.
that you were the center of a lot of attention,
Mm,
you know, um, and it's still just like it's still potent
yeah.
for me.
She's been my role model for many years. So
Yeah.
to find you through her feels very fitting, and to have you both help me do this. I have probably been an abolitionist since my sister was killed and they tried to lock the dude up, and I was like, I don't care. Like that's not the point. And my father tried to keep him in jail, and I knew at 13 that prisons were not the answer, that cops were horrible. And there was somebody posing as a cop raping people, and cops were telling women, and I was living as a woman, or girl. And they literally told me in a conversation that I should just pull over when asked, even if it wasn't a safe place. I shouldn't try and go find some light. I should just deal with the consequences later. So I knew at a very young age, even though I was white in a very white town, that these folks were dangerous. And so I feel like being able to step into this. I'm also somebody that was tortured by medical people. And so stepping into this is my rightful place and a chance to stop other people from being incarcerated. So thank you for helping make that possible.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that too. And just lastly, I'll say, so I remember, something along the same lines of what you've just shared, um, as well in the prayer requests. Just about, our healing from trauma, from abuse, from the violence of the systems that we're trying to survive. And I just want to say, like, this takes time, and it takes gentleness. We have to be gentle. We have to go slowly. Like, it goes back to this question of, like, we have to allow ourselves to be in a process, not get so wrapped up in wanting to be out of the process into the healing. Where we're at in the suffering is important for us, you know. And I just encourage all of you who are like the lone voices, abolitionist voices in your families, just to keep doing it, to keep showing up, like to keep pushing back, right? Um, if you join me for free radicals, um, which seems like a lifetime ago at this point, but like it was just, a couple of days ago apparently. But my little nephew, some of you saw my nephew, Khalil, and it's important for me and his parents, my sister and my brother-in-law, that like we train him. Like I talk like I'm a parent, but like I'm like the godparent in a way, not just the uncle, but to like really invest in the lives of the young people, maybe in our families, right? To give them a different example, like to be that relative, that uncle, that whoever, that parent that's offering a different embodiment. Like it's important that we do that, and we have to keep showing up and being different, and being argumentative, and just following our path, right? And I promise you, because I'm the same way in my family. After a while, people will start to appreciate it. Not everyone, obviously, but there are people who will see that, and you will become a lifeline for them. You know, just keep doing what you're doing, and we keep healing and working together. I know we're well past time, but anyhow, thank you everyone. And I will. We have stuff this weekend, so Sunday service. I think we have community gathering on Sunday for the members of the Podium community. So